I don't really know how to start this, maybe with a warning. Because if you ever find yourself standing in front of apartment 313, don't go in. I didn't believe in that kind of thing before. I thought ghosts were just stories old tenants told to make their dull lives sound interesting. But this place listens. It was late September when I moved in. The building sat in the oldest part of the city. Narrow alleys, cracked sidewalks, faded signs written in languages most people don't speak anymore. I was new in town and needed something cheap, and the rent for apartment 313 was impossibly low. That should have been my first red flag. The landlord was a quiet man with grey eyes that never blinked enough. He handed me the keys like he wanted to be rid of them. "It's old," he said. "Sound carries through the walls. Don't mind the noises." I laughed it off. Every old building creaks, right? The first night was uneventful. I unpacked, set up my laptop, ate takeout straight from the bag. But somewhere past midnight, while I was half asleep on the couch, I heard something, a soft knock, 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 coming from inside the walls. It wasn't the pipes. It was slower, like someone politely asking to come in. I stood there, listening. Then it stopped. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the building settling. Maybe I was tired. But around 3 a.m., the knock started again, this time from behind the bathroom mirror. The mirror wasn't nailed flat to the wall, it hung slightly crooked, like someone had taken it down once and didn't bother putting it back properly. When I touched it, it felt cold. Too cold. Behind it, I thought I heard a breath. Low wind through window gap. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I noticed something strange about the hallway outside my apartment. Every other door had small nameplates, except mine. Just the number 313 scratched unevenly into the wood. I asked the landlord about it later that day, and he looked at me like I'd said something obscene. "That number's not supposed to be used anymore," he muttered. "You must have read it wrong." That night, I made sure to photograph the door, just to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. The picture came out blurred, but the numbers were clear, 313. Over the next week, things got worse. The air in the apartment started to feel heavier. Like every breath took effort. I'd catch reflections moving in the black screen of my turned-off TV. I'd hear muffled whispers through the vents, a woman's voice repeating something that sounded like "stay quiet." One evening, I came home late from work. The hallway light outside 313 was flickering again. I unlocked my door, and the smell hit me. Rotting wood and something metallic, like rust or dried blood. My fridge was off. Every light bulb in the place was dead. But the bathroom light was on. I stepped closer, and the door creaked open just enough to show the mirror, perfectly clean now. Not a single speck of dust. But there was something else. The reflection behind me, a shape, someone standing near the corner of the room, head tilted. I turned fast, heart pounding. Nothing. Empty. When I looked back at the mirror again, the reflection was gone. But smeared across the glass, written backward, were the words, "Don't look at me." I left that night. Slept in my car till sunrise. Told myself I'd grab my things in the morning and find somewhere else. But when I returned, the door to apartment 313 was wide open. Inside, the place looked different, rearranged, like someone had lived there for years. Furniture I didn't own. Pictures of people I didn't know, smiling with eyes that seemed painted on. And in every frame, the background was the same, my apartment. That was when I realized something horrifying. The air inside didn't smell anymore. It felt still, almost peaceful. I looked around, feeling watched but drawn in. I walked toward the mirror again, and for the first time, it reflected the room clearly. Except, I wasn't in it, that I didn't move for a long time. My mind was stuck between running and staring until I could explain what I was seeing. But that reflection, my apartment without me in it, looked too perfect. Every detail matched, down to the faint crack in the ceiling. Only, in that version, the lights were warm and steady. It looked alive. When I finally blinked, the mirror fogged slightly, and I swear I saw breath from the other side. Short exhale, I grabbed my phone, but the screen stayed black even after holding the power button. Dead battery. Except it had been at 70% when I walked in. I backed out of the bathroom, whispering to myself, "Just get out, just get out." But as I reached the door, I noticed the hallway through the peephole was darker than it should have been. The emergency light that always burned red at the end of the corridor was gone. In its place was faint movement, like someone swaying slowly. I tried the handle. It wouldn't budge. The lock turned, but the door itself felt fused to the frame. I banged on it until my hand hurt. From somewhere beyond, footsteps began climbing the stairs, measured, heavy, dragging. They stopped right outside. Silence. Then a single knock. 3 slow taps. The same rhythm I'd heard that first night. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. "Nothing. Just breathing on the other side. Long, wet, like someone breathing through water." I backed away and glanced at the mirror again. Now my reflection was visible, but it wasn't matching me. It was standing still, smiling faintly while I panicked. Then its hand lifted and pointed toward the living room wall. There was a faint outline there, beneath old wallpaper. I peeled it back with shaking fingers and found a thin wooden panel, about the size of a small door, nailed shut. Behind it, something scratched once, deliberate, patient. I found a screwdriver in a drawer and pried the nails loose. The wood fell forward with a sigh of dust. Behind it was a narrow cavity stuffed with yellowed papers and a small, rusted tin box. I pulled it out, set it on the table, and flipped the lid. Inside were photographs, 20, maybe 30, all showing the same woman, pale, dark-eyed, standing in this apartment decades ago. In the later pictures, her expression changed from calm to terrified. The last one was overexposed except for her mouth, mid-scream. Under the photos was a folded note written in jagged cursive, "Don't answer the knocks. She learns your voice." I dropped the paper and heard the doorknob twist behind me. Slowly. Once. Twice. Then stop. I turned the bolt and pressed my ear to the wood. On the other side, someone whispered, "Let me back in." I stumbled backward and tripped over the box. The photos scattered. Every picture now showed me standing where the woman had been. Same pose. Same eyes. The air turned cold enough to frost my breath. The lights flickered out. In the dark, I felt the floorboards shift, like something crawling just beneath them. When the lights came back, the mirror had fallen off the wall and cracked across the middle. From behind the split glass, a faint glow pulsed, heartbeat slow. I crouched closer and saw that the light came from another room beyond the reflection, an impossible extension of the apartment, stretching endlessly. And at the center of that endless corridor stood the woman from the photos. Her head tilted the same way my reflections had. She lifted a hand and mouthed words I couldn't hear. Then she pressed her palm against the inside of the mirror. Cracks spread under her touch like veins. The apartment door suddenly swung open by itself, slamming against the wall. Cold air flooded in, smelling of rain and old metal. I didn't hesitate. I ran, out of the room, down the stairs, barefoot, hearing those same 3 knocks echo behind me with every step. I didn't stop until I reached the street. The whole building stood silent, every window black except mine, glowing faintly with that same pulse. I should have kept walking. But something in me needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. So I pulled out my phone again, it turned on this time, and snapped a photo of the building. In the picture, apartment 313's window was open. And standing inside, barely visible in the dark, was me, smiling back. I didn't go back right away. I crashed on a co-worker's couch, telling him my place had a pipe issue. I left out the part about mirrors and whispers. Still, every night I woke at 3:13 a.m. Certain someone was standing at the foot of the bed just outside my vision. After 3 nights, I needed answers. I started digging through public records. The building dated back to 1910, once called the Miller Apartments. Most of the files were dull, plumbing permits, renovation receipts, until I found a coroner's report from 1978. A tenant named Eleanor Gray, found inside 313. Cause of death, asphyxiation. Case note scribbled in the margin, no sign of forced entry. Mirror shattered inward. That name stuck with me. Eleanor Gray. The woman from the photographs? It had to be. I visited the archives the next morning. The clerk looked at the form, frowned, and said, "We don't usually keep those." But when I mentioned apartment 313, she went pale. She disappeared into a back room and returned with a single manila envelope, unlabeled. Inside was a rent ledger, yellowed at the edges. Page after page of tenant names, all crossed out until the last entry. Eleanor Gray, terminated. Below it, a line in different handwriting, lease reassigned to next occupant. No name, just the words, until returned. I left the archives shaking. The rain had turned to mist, and for a moment I could swear I saw someone across the street watching me, thin, pale, wearing a dress soaked dark. But when a bus passed, she was gone. That night I decided to face it. I told myself I'd grab what little I owned, move out, and never look back. Around midnight I stood again in front of the building. Every window was black. The front door, which normally needed a key, was already ajar. Inside smelled of dust and something sweet rotting underneath. My shoes left prints in a thin layer of grey powder. Each step creaked like the place was breathing. When I reached the third floor, the corridor lights flickered once and steadied. The number 313 was gone from my door. Only a rectangle of cleaner wood showed where it had been. But the door stood half open, waiting. I pushed it and froze. Everything inside had returned to normal. My boxes stacked neatly. My coffee mug still on the counter. It was like the last week never happened. Except for one thing, a tape recorder sat on the table, red light blinking. I hadn't owned one. I pressed play. A woman's voice came through, fragile, whisper thin. "If you hear this, she's awake again. She listens through the walls, through names, through mirrors. Don't speak her name out loud." The tape clicked off, then restarted on its own. The same voice, closer now, "You already have." The lights went out. I could feel the air move, slow and deliberate, as if something huge shifted just behind me. In the blackness, the mirror across the room began to glow faintly, showing my outline even though the room was dark. Then a second shape appeared behind me, Eleanor. Her eyes were empty sockets filled with light. She leaned close to my ear and whispered a single word that made no sense until later, "returned." I ran. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, doors multiplying on both sides. Behind each door, knocks answered me, hundreds of them, like an echoing heartbeat in wood. When I burst into the stairwell, the outside door was already open, but something invisible pressed against my chest, holding me there. The air vibrated, a whisper beneath hearing. Then, just as suddenly, it released. I stumbled into the street, gasping. The building was silent again. Every window black. Every number scraped away. I called the landlord that night, demanding an explanation. He sighed for a long time before saying, "You should never have gone inside. That apartment isn't ours anymore." Then he hung up. For a few days I stayed in a hotel. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that mirror light pulsing behind my eyelids. I tried to tell myself it was stress, a hallucination from exhaustion. Then the hotel phone rang. No one should have known my room number. When I answered, only static came through, until a woman's voice whispered, "Your lease isn't finished." Click. I threw my bag in the car and drove until dawn. Yet wherever I stopped, the reflection in every window carried that same faint glow. Even the rearview mirror, behind my shoulder, the outline of a woman, eyes like empty bulbs. I finally went back to the city to end it properly. The building looked different. New paint, scaffolding, a for-lease sign. A young couple was touring with the agent. I shouted for them to wait, but no sound came out. My voice simply vanished in the air. I climbed the steps anyway. Where the old door had been, a new plaque read 313, available. The key hung from the knob as if waiting for me. When I reached for it, my hand passed straight through. That's when I saw my reflection in the glass of the entry door, not standing where I was, but inside the apartment, smiling faintly. I understood then what returned meant. The apartment doesn't haunt people, it keeps them. One tenant replaces the last. If you ever move into a place with numbers that look freshly carved, if the landlord won't meet your eyes, check the mirrors before you unpack. Because somewhere in that reflection, someone's already waiting for you to take their place.